It's day 2 of the Democratic National Convention as we take a live look at the United Center in Chicago. Headliners, former President Barack Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, and First Gentleman Doug Emhoff are set to take the stage tonight.
And we're now joined live by NBC News correspondent, White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. Day 2 of the convention. We saw the passing of the torch last night, but looking ahead to tonight, what is the theme we should be looking out for?
Michael, in some ways, it's almost as if this is a second convention. The Biden piece, the celebration of his record and his long service, was the focus of Monday. And now it really shifts into trying to introduce, define, and set the stage for Kamala Harris and Governor Walz. And of course, one of the connection points of that is Barack Obama, who chose Joe Biden as his running mate and is now really trying to do everything he can to help Kamala Harris make her own history. Barack Obama is the first African-American president. Kamala Harris trying to be the first woman to seek that office and to win. And so you'll have emotion tonight for sure. Some of the nostalgia of the Obama period with both Barack and Michelle Obama, and then the personal side of the vice president with her husband speaking. And of course, he could become the first gentleman. And so we expect to get a lot of that emotion and storytelling tonight. So much of it, too, is about, is this an achievable goal? Can Democrats win with the stakes as tight? I don't need to tell you in Pennsylvania how close this race is and how much Pennsylvania is a battleground and is one of the biggest prizes with your very generous amount of electoral votes. So expect that trying to make that connection from here in Chicago to battleground states is something that will play out over the next several days as they want to activate Democrats and those who maybe don't vote regularly, or even some of the Haley voters from the Republican side, and try to get them to pay attention and to give Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz a close look. Michael? Tasmin?
Yeah, Kelly, so talk to us about the behind the scenes, the energy on the ground there for night 2, especially now, like you said, we've got a potentially historic ticket that's on the line here, and full focus now is on Kamala Harris.
It certainly is. And although she has been the sitting vice president now for 3+ years, the idea is to try to allow her to step into the spotlight and to be defined in a new way. So there is enthusiasm. Some of that is based on the history-making part of this, and some of it is about the enormous shakeup that has happened on the Democrat side to have a change in the race that is allowing a younger generation in Kamala Harris to be the standard bearer of the party. And does that change the race in ways that maybe the president could not have done if he had remained in the race? So that's part of what we're feeling here. Democrats basically are seeing this is a ticket that they believe can win, but they also want to caution, and you hear Kamala Harris say she's the underdog. They don't want Democrats to have any complacency about this, and they know that especially in your state, it will take trying to drive up the vote in Democratic areas and trying to shave off some of the vote in areas where former President Trump does so well.
Yeah, we'll be watching. Kelly O'Donnell, thank you so much for joining us.